Today's daf we're going to learn is Nazir daf lamed tet. Today's daf is sponsored in honor of the birthday of Audrey Mondro, a daf Yomi learner, by her children and grandchildren. Thank you for modeling us how to always grow and learn. Today's daf is sponsored in honor of the bat mitzvah of Abigail, bat Yonatan, bat Ilana this weekend in Riverdale. Abigail, your whole family is so proud of you, of your love of Torah and your dedication to learning, including learning Talmud with your ima. With love from your Bubby and aunts, uncles, and cousins. Today's daf is sponsored by the Hadran Zoom family in honor of the bar mitzvah of Amitai, son of our fellow learner, Devra Kessner Beta. We're inspired by your dedication to learning Amitai. Today's daf is sponsored by Sarah Borelowitz in loving memory of her mother-in-law, Sarah Borelowitz, on her yurt site on the 11th of Adar. It's wonderful when your mother-in-law is also your friend, missing you lots. We're going to get started now with the end of yesterday's daf. So quick review. We had Abaye, who argued with Rava about how many sets of lashes one gets when one eats something that's forbidden as a Nazir. Is it if you eat grapes, wine, any of those things, pits, skins, do you get 2 sets of lashes, one for what you did and one for this general prohibition from everything made from the grapevine? Abaye says yes, Rava says no, because that's a lav shebechlalot. It's a general lo taseh, which you don't get separate lashes for it. Came Rav Papa, and Rav Papa questioned Abaye and said, there's a braita that gives an example of someone who ate 5 different things that were all forbidden to the Nazir, and he gets 5 sets of lashes. That proves that you're wrong. To which Abaye answered, no, he just left things off the list. Then, and I have to say that there's a bit of a complication in this whole sugya and how this works, and I'm going to suggest that the whole part about my shiur and all that is all what we call the stam. We kind of put in parentheses the whole next section, and then actually the Gemara will make a lot more sense. So when we say then there's this whole debate about, well, if you leave off, you have to leave off more than one. That is a whole discussion happening later. And then they suggest, and then that doesn't work. And then Rav from Perzikia comes and he suggests another one. And then we end up with 2, and that kind of resolves the Abaye. Okay. But if we just look at the conversation as Papa asks the braita against Abaye, and Abaye answers kind of a shiur, period. After he answers the question and resolves it, then comes this next line. I'll tell you what the problem with this next line is. Ella amar Rav Papa. So after that, now Ella usually is a response to a question. The problem is we don't really have a question now because we resolved Abaye. That's what we did. And then we, even in this parenthetical part, we kind of asked a question again about Abaye and resolved it. So we're in a resolution now. There's really no question. I'll point out that the way the Schottenstein, for example, explains it, and it's based on some of the commentaries, is that right now you're missing it. But this section actually is a difficulty. Again, there's an unwritten difficulty here, which is as soon as we resolve it for Abaye, we now have a question on Rava. Why is that? Because we just said, right, Abaye, you don't have an issue. And then what did we do? We said, well, then in the end, we said there should be 7 sets of lashes according to Abaye in the end, and that's okay because we left off 2. But according to Rava, there should be 6 because the last one they added was the Bena Beinayim, the pulp. So now we have a problem with Rava, and that's what Rav Papa is coming to address right now, why this braita isn't difficult for Rava. But I think there's a better pshat. I think the better way to understand it is that, again, putting all the stuff aside in a parentheses, what happened there happened later, not in the discussion between Rav Papa and Abaye. But then again, Rav Papa asked this question from braita. Abaye answers, he just left it out, and then that's okay. Like I'm not worried. It happens. Sometimes the Tana leaves things out, right? We're not all perfect. We sometimes forget things. He left it out. And then Rav Papa says, Ella, okay, in response to what you said, I'll just point out, Lo Tanya Midi Chamesh. The braita really didn't say 5. Okay, basically, and this is what you're going to see happens in the sugya. And this is why I think this is a much simpler way of reading the sugya. Not that all of a sudden there's some question against Rava that they forgot to mention. But a much better explanation is after Abaye answers the question, Rav Papa says, by the way, there really was no question. Okay, now that's a little bit strange. What do you mean there's no question? You quoted a braita that said, if you do the following, blah, 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 you're lokef 5. You get 5 sets of lashes. So after Abaye answers the question, Papa says, by the way, the braita never said 5, which they ask. V'ha'otve chamesh, but raised a question on Abaye saying 5. And if it didn't say 5 in the braita, then why did you question Abaye? Something doesn't jive here. So before we get to the answer, I want to give you some history about Abaye, Rav Papa, and Rav. Rav Papa was actually 5th generation, and Rav and Abaye were 4th generation and Moraim. Rav and Abaye, we know they're very famous. They're always in the Gemara, so is Rav Papa. But we know that Rav and Abaye are always arguing with each other. Rav was a Rosh Yeshiva, and he died. And while he was alive, he died before Abaye. While he was alive, Rav Papa was his main student. When he died, Rav Papa went to learn with Abaye. Okay? But when Rav Papa came to Abaye, he was already a big Talmud Chacham. He wasn't such a student anymore. So even though he's a generation below, he came to Abaye's yeshiva already as a big Talmud Chacham. And in fact, Abaye felt a little threatened by him. You might remember this story where Abaye says to him, oh, well, it's because, you have parents and I never had parents. And that's why you're able to learn so easily. And that's why you were able to achieve kind of, more than Abaye at that age, I guess. And Abaye was jealous of him. And then Abaye basically puts an ayin hara on his parents, and Rav Papa's parents die. Crazy story. You probably remember it because one of those, I see some nods there. So viewing their relationship in this way, here comes this very smart alecky, really, or very smart, I wouldn't say smart aleck, but maybe in the story you'll find him in the end, the smart aleck. Smart guy who comes to the yeshiva and Abaye feels a little threatened by him. You can see why this might be. So this story fits in perfectly with that whole scene. So what happens? Amar Rav Papa, I thought that Abaye just made this up on his own and that he wasn't basing it on tradition. And I thought that he decided on his own that Mikol Asher Yaseh is another lotas. And he didn't have any tradition about it. So what does Rav Papa say? I'm kind of smart. I figure, what will I do? Right? Okay, let's just explain it. He says, I'll make up a braita, okay? I don't think he made up the whole braita. I think he just added the word chamesh. You get 5 sets of lashes. So I don't know what it said in the original braita, or maybe there wasn't a braita. Maybe he made up the whole braita. And he basically, because you all know the rules we've been learning Gemara for a long time, you know the rules. If you can bring a braita to question an amora, then the amora either can just, and by the way, if you don't know all this, which is fine, the beginner's class on Sunday is going to be discussing exactly this, which are what are types of questions that are asked on the Mishnah and what are possible answers, right? When you're an amora and you get questioned by a Mishnah or a Tanaitic source, what are your options? So one of the options in a Mishnah like this, you have a list of things you could say. The Tana left things off. But if Abaye made this up on his own, and Rav Papa questions him and says his braita that says you only get 5, and Abaye made it up, what would he say? Do you remember? We've seen this many times. Tanya. Look, if there's a braita that says that, there's a braita that says this, I have to back down. And that's usually what they do. If someone quotes a braita against you and you made something up, you thought you were right, and then you see you're proved wrong. So you're proven wrong. So he thought he was going to get Abaye to back down from his approach by saying there's braita that goes against your approach. And he figured, but lo yadana, he didn't know de Gemara he biyadid. He didn't know that Abaye had a tradition about this. Now you can see why sometimes they'll say Tanya, because they probably made it up on their own. And sometimes they force a crazy reading of the Mishnah or a braita just to fit in with their tradition, because they're so convinced of it, because they know that this is what they learned and it must be true. So I'm going to bend over backwards to figure out how to read this Mishnah in a way that matches my opinion. Right? And therefore, v'lo hadrabe, that's why Abaye didn't back down. So basically, the conversation goes like this. Rav Papa throws a braita against Abaye to get Abaye, right? A fake braita to get Abaye to back down. But Abaye doesn't back down. He brings an answer, Tana Bashir. And then again, ignoring the whole parenthetical discussion that goes on later, comes Rav Papa and he says, Elam Rav Papa, he says, I guess I was wrong. And by the way, the braita really doesn't say that. And I only brought it because I was trying to get you to back down. Now that you didn't back down, I realize you must have a tradition about this and you didn't just make this up on your own. Very interesting, especially considering Rav Papa was his student, kind of a smart alecky kind of student, to do such a stunt. It makes you wonder, by the way, that in all these discussions of braita, when everyone says, oh, here's a braita to question, was anyone else making up things? Because it's a very easy way to knock someone out by bringing a braita. But, and braita were memorized orally, and, every once in a while, someone brings in a braita that says this, that says that, it kind of raises a whole big question about the truth and the veracity of these braita that they're bringing. Anyway, this is a really big stunt, I think, on Rav Papa's part. It's kind of comical and kind of interesting to see, creative, I would say. Okay, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. So now we're back to the Mishnah. We have this machloket about what is chartzanim and what is zag. So this is going to be very simple. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Kima mitargaminam. The Targum says on the words chartzanim v'zag, right? All the psukim have a Targum on them that was added later, a translation in Aramaic. Mi portznim v'aditzurin. Here Rabbi Yosef. So they say this translation, portznim v'aditzurim, means like Rabbi Yossi, portznim. So exactly how you get from portznim, we don't know the exact translations of these words. So itzurim, the Mefarish says basically portznim sounds like pnimi, the inner part, which is the seeds, and then to the zag, which are the itzurin is the outside part, he says, and therefore it seems to match Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Okay, that's an aside. Let's move on. Mishnah. Stam Nazirut Shloshim Yom. So now we're on to a new topic. Stam Nazirut Shloshim Yom. We already know that. This really isn't telling us a new halacha. This is just setting up the next part of the Mishnah. Since Stam Nazirut is 30 days, Gilach Oshegachuhu Listim Soter Shloshim Yom. So therefore, it doesn't matter how long your Nazirut was, someone shaves your hair. If you remember what has to happen. So number one, you can't cut your hair. Number two, today we're going to get all into cutting hair and what exactly is forbidden and all that, or how and all sorts of details going forward. But you also have to grow your hair. In other words, an issue of cutting it, not cutting it, and there's an issue of having hair growth so that when you do the shaving, because you shave your hair at the end of the process, then you're going to need a hair growth. Now we'll see exactly how much, but you need hair growth. So therefore, if you didn't cut your hair, but someone came and shaved off your head, some bandits came over and cut your hair, so ter shloshim yom, you basically need 30 days. It doesn't matter where you, because stam nazirut is shloshim yom, the average nazirut term is 30 days. Therefore, even if you took for 100 days, if someone cuts your hair in the middle, you didn't do it yourself, but someone else cut it, you're going to need to grow your hair for 30 days. And then you can finish your process. Nazir, okay, this is seemingly if someone cut off all your hair, okay? Nazir shegilach ben bezug ben betal o shesifsef kol shehu chayav. A Nazir who shaves off their own head, okay, or cuts their hair, here are the different methods by which you will get lashes. If you cut with a zug, which is a pair, that's scissors, that's basically a pair of knives. Bein b'ta'ar, with a razor. O shesifsef kol shehu. There's a debate about what sifsef is. Either you pluck out a hair with your hand, or it could be from the word sof, which is the end. You cut off the ends of your hair, as opposed to cutting off your whole hair. So now, we now have, okay, all the methods of cutting, any kind of plucking out by hand with an implement, doesn't matter whether it's a scissor or a razor. A razor is obviously going to give you a closer haircut, right? Or a better haircut than with scissors. Now the Gemara starts off with a very interesting question that the Gemara is asking this. Abaye lehu, hi Mazia, hair, milatachat rave or milael? Does it grow from the root? Okay. All those who color your hair knows it goes from the root, right? Or if you see people with colored hair or all that, you can see it grows from the root. Or does it grow from the ends? Okay. Do the ends of your hair, when your hair grows, is it extra hair is being added from the end? Or is it that it's growing from here and from the follicle and it's basically growing out from there? Why is the Gemara asking this question? Well, it's exactly the next words. The ma'naf kamina. What's the relevance of this question? Well, the relevance is Nazir shegilchuhu listim, our case in the Mishnah. If bandits come and they shave your head off, but they didn't shave everything, they cut your hair, they gave you a haircut. They left you enough hair that you could fold each hair follicle, each hair, you could fold back, okay, you could turn it, kind of, fold it so that it goes back to the base. So it's long enough to be able to fold it back, basically. Why is that an important measurement? Because when it comes to, let's say, shtei sa'arot, which is where we have it in terms of reaching maturity, you have 2 pubic hairs, the length of hair needs to be this length, that you can actually bend it back. Okay, it's enough to kind of fold in half. So since that's a shear of hair growth, if they cut your hair and left you that amount, meaning, what's the issue? You have to have growth. And we're going to see in a minute, not only that, but it has to be that it was growing from the beginning. You have to, in the end, shave the hair that was there in the beginning. Because what you basically do is you're, in essence, sanctifying your hair at the time you take upon Nazirut. You're saying, the hair that's on my head now, I will not cut. And that hair I will offer up. So why is this relevant? Well, if you're going to say it grows from the root, then Nazirut hashakle. Then basically when they cut your hair and left this little amount, which later we're going to say takes about a week to grow, if they left only that little amount, let's say it was 15 days into your Nazirut, they shave off your hair, you have another 15 days left. That 15, whatever they cut off, right, was what you had originally, okay? Because your hair grew from the root, and therefore what they cut is what was there in the beginning, and now that's gone. So you don't have any hair right now from the beginning. So now you have to start from the beginning, and whatever hair growth you have from now, in other words, now you have, let's say it was day 15, and they cut your hair to Kidei Lachuf Rosho. So you have a little bit of hair right now, a short amount of hair. That hair is now going to get longer, and that hair you will offer up 30 days later, okay? Then you're going to need to start all over. But if you say it grows from the ends, then what? What they cut off was what grew while you were in Nazir. And what's left, the stuff that's at the base, at the root, is actually old hair. So now, right, what you sanctified in the beginning of your Nazirut is actually still there. Because what grew from the end, and that's what they cut off. So now you still have the hair from the beginning, and then you wouldn't need to wait anything. So that would be the relevance. We're going to have now is 5 different attempts. Only one is going to suggest, the first one is going to suggest that it grows to the end. All the rest are going to basically prove that it obviously grows from the root. And they're actually not going to prove it from sources for the most part, or maybe completely, we'll see. They're going to prove it from reality, okay, which makes a lot of sense. So they're going to get back to the hair coloring, only this could be their last one. You would have thought they would have started with it, but because maybe it's the most convincing, often they wait to the end to get the most convincing because they want to get all the other ones that maybe can be, go either way. We're going to have 5 attempts. Like I said, the first one, if you just want to organize them, the first one will be to say from the end. All the other 4 are going to say from the root. The first 3 are going to be rejected. The last 2 are going to stand. Tashma. Let's see. Let's learn it from here. Meha in bachaya. Okay, we're going to get to lice, dead lice and live lice. A live lice that's in your house, in your hair. Dekayim beikva debinta. Where do they live generally? Okay, anybody's ever had lice or comb people's hair for lice? They stay at the root. Now, if they stay at the root, if you're going to say that the hair grows from the root, then what would happen as your hair grows? What's it going to happen? It's going to grow. It's going to move with your hair growth. It kind of attaches itself to your hair that's at the root, but then it's going to grow and it's going to be found at the end, and it's not found at the end. So that would prove that it must grow from the end. And that's why it stays at the root, because the root doesn't move, right? The hair at the root never moves. Obviously, they're going to say, no, that's not true. You don't have to prove that. You could say, really, the hair grows from the root. But because it's alive, it still keeps, as your hair grows, it's going to keep jumping back into going near the roots, because that's where it's sweatier, it's nicer for them, it's more comfortable. So, right, if you ever read the book Hakina Nechama. Anyway, that's expected reading. Okay, Tashma. Let's try from a dead one. Inba meta bereisha debinta. Okay, you have a lice bug in your head that's dead. Okay, a louse. You want to call it that's dead. Bereisha debinta. It's a nit, I guess. Okay, that's what you're correcting me. It's a nit. So you have one that now died in your head. And where do you find the dead ones? At the end of the hair. So now, if you're going to say that it's from the ends they grow, then it should be found at the root. Because why? When it was alive, it was at the root, right? And then if the hair grows from the end, the hair doesn't move from the top. So basically, how did it get to the end? To which they're going to answer, no, it has no strength anymore because it's dead. It basically falls down. Okay, gravity maybe takes it down toward the end. That doesn't prove anything. Okay, we're done with those. moving on. Tashma bi blorit de goyim. Now, some people have blorit de kushim, okay? And we're talking about these braids. The patar de megadlima, they make these tight braids. And after they make these tight braids in their hair, rafya milatachat. After a little while, where do they start loosening? From the scalp. They start loosening from there. So what does that prove? If they start loosening and untying from there, then what does that show? It shows as there's new hair growth, that hair isn't braided because it's coming out. So that would show milatachat, right? So again, like I said in the beginning, only the first one thought it was from the end. All the rest of these are going to try to prove from the root. So to which they answer no. The reason why it unties from the roots at that point is not because of the hair is growing and that's the reason. Hatamnami aide de come to he mishichba de rafia. What happens when you lie down and sleep? It causes, right? What part are you lying on? The part that's next to your head. The part that's loose at the bottom is not being affected by when you go to sleep. So it's your sleeping and your movements in your sleep that's actually undoing your hair, right? We all know that when you go to sleep, at least if you have a decent amount of hair, you wake up in the morning, your hair's a mess, right? It kind of like messes it up while you're sleeping, especially if you have curls like mine. So anyway, Tashma. Next source. So this one also couldn't be proven. So 3 failed attempts, but now we're going to have 2 attempts that work. Tashma misikarta derape amra milatacha. This is, they would paint the wool on the sheep. We talked about the Nazir behema. The 10th sheep is sanctified. So the 10th sheep is basically you put you paint it red. You paint it on the wool. And the part where you paint it, apparently, because of the paint, it gets thicker. But then what happens? As the hair grows, and it grows from the follicle, so it starts to get looser over there in that part because it doesn't have the paint on it, right? And not to mention, there's no paint on that part, but they don't say that, but they'll say that in a minute. Vitanya. Now, this word vitanya is very difficult. What's this word vitanya? And this appears in a braita. So first of all, it actually appears in a Mishnah, this idea of painting it red. Appears in the Mishnah B'chol Road on Daf Kedem Abed. Anyway, some people say, right, so the word Tanya in itself is a mistake because it should be Tnan. Some people say this whole word is a mistake. In other words, some people read it as they're trying to say all the other examples we were bringing from reality. This one has a source. It's based on a Mishnah. The problem is it's not like the Mishnah really talks about it loosening. The Mishnah talks about the fact that you did this sakarta, you put this red stuff on. It's not really proving our point. And if you really wanted to prove it from this braita, how do we normally have it? It starts tashma, and then it starts quoting the braita or the Mishnah. So if we really wanted to quote it from the Mishnah, it would have started with Tanya and not said at the very end, and by the way, this appears in the Mishnah. So it's a little bit strange. Some people say that because the next word is vitu, which is a lot like vitanya, because also they used to put, right, abbreviations, like just the first 2 letters or something. Could be it was really a mistake and it doesn't belong here at all. Okay, and seems like it doesn't belong here. The other thing that's strange is we're now going to get to number 5. If you notice, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all introduced with a tashma. And this one is not introduced by a tashma. This just says vitu and furthermore, which is a little bit strange because you would assume they would bring another one with tashma. You could say this is connected to the previous because they're going to say these 2 things in the end prove our point. But maybe I just was thinking maybe it was tashma and it ended up by accident turning into vitanya. And really maybe this was supposed to be a tashma. I don't know. But this word seems to be a little bit out of place here, and it's not just me who says this. There's commentaries that say this word doesn't really belong. Okay, in any case, let's move on. Vitu, and also, katsave sabya diinokon, Hadran ikvenim. So now when people color their hair, right, sabim, right, older people color their hair, sometimes even younger people, then we all know that it starts to be right, white at the roots and darker at the bottom. So basically, shmamina, from there we can infer milatachat rabe shmamina. Include, obviously, what we knew it, I mean, we hope that we're going to conclude that it grows from the follicles. Okay, we're now at the top of Amud Bet. And now we're going to get to a question on this. So all we had so far, okay, let's just review our daf and then we won't go back from the beginning at the end to the very beginning. But we started off with this discussion of Abaye and Rav Papa, and kind of Rav Papa backs out of his difficulty against Abaye once Abaye proved his point, and then he realized, okay, Abaye really must have had a tradition. Then we just took the targum on Kartzenim Ba'adzad and matched it up to that one approach, because there were 2 approaches in the Mishnah. Which one does it match? Then we brought this Mishnah, which talked about a few things, but we really went into this idea about the question, does hair grow from the root, from the follicle, or from the end? And even though they had 5 attempts, 3 of them were rejected. In the end, they brought 2 successful attempts to prove that it grows from the follicles, from the roots. But now they're going to have a problem with this, because what was the nafkamina? You remember? The nafkamina was that if listim come, bandits, and they cut your hair. So now if it grows from the root, we're going to actually, if they cut your hair, what's the halacha going to be? You're going to have to start all over again, right? Because all the hair that you sanctified in the beginning is no longer here. You're going to need new hair growth to sanctify that's going to start from now and end 30 days later. But now we're going to quote a braita that says the opposite. And therefore they're going to say, well, if you said that was the nafkamina and that was your answer, we're now going to have a problem with this braita. Elahadatanya Nazir shegilchuhu listim. V'shiarubo kedei lachof rosho li'ikaro. So again, listim, shaved your hair off. Then, but they didn't shave the whole head. What they do, they left you with hair growth enough to bend it back, which means the minimum amount of hair is still there. So again, what are we going to assume? Based on the fact that it grows from the follicle, it doesn't help us that you have some minimal hair growth, because that all grew after you took on your nizirut. And whatever was there at the beginning, they actually cut off. So what does the halacha say? Eino soter. This doesn't knock out any days of nizirut. You can go ahead and finish up your nizirut and shave your hair. You don't have to wait any extra days. The isal kadatach, and if you're going to say milatachat Abaye, that it really grows from the follicles, listor. This should cancel your days. So this doesn't make any sense. To which they answer, again, when you have a problem with a braita, with your opinion, because of a braita, there's different methodologies upon which you can answer. So what they're going to say is 2 things. We're going to do an ukimta. We're going to say this is in a particular case. And then we're going to say it's also following a particular opinion. Okay, so we're going to have to do both. They shaved him after he finished his 30 days. So he was on day 31, about to bring the sacrifices and shave his hair. And then they cut off his hair. So I see you're asking, why would bandits do this? Maybe they knew what was going on and they wanted to torture this guy and they knew he was going to have to be a Nazir, right? This is like thugs that are after him for, I don't know, he didn't pay back money. So what do? They want to penalize him or something. So they cut off his hair. Omanu. And who does this match? Rabbi Eliezer. What does Rabbi Eliezer say? We saw this already before. Rabbi Eliezer holds, Damal kol, I think we saw this already, but maybe not. Kol achar melot shiva sotim. He's talking about if you become impure. If you become impure to a dead body while you're a Nazir, after you finished your 30 days, what does Rabbi Eliezer hold you have to do? You don't have to start again because you finished your 30 days. What do? Shiva sotil. All you have to do is it breaks 7 days. In other words, you have to wait 7 days because you have to go through your purity process. You have to purify yourself. Finish your 7 days, and then you just bring your sacrifices because you already finished your 30 days. My time now, okay, so now it's the same thing here. If they shave off your hair, what do you need now? You just need the minimum hair growth necessary. So that hair growth is going to be hidei lachuf rosho, right, which is going to take 7 days. So now, in other words, they left kedei lachuf rosho li'ikaro. That might be no good. But since you already finished your 30 days, we don't make you start from the beginning because that's his whole approach. So now we're going to say, my time to Rav Eliezer. Where does he get this from? Yalif, he derives tiglacha tarami tiglacha tuma. He derives the shaving because now let's think about it. This Nazir who got impure, right? What does he do? He shaves at the end of the 7 days of becoming pure, right? He's going to shave at the end of that. So he learns tiglacha tara from tiglacha tuma. The same way when you shave at the end, right? You waited the 7 days and then you can do the shaving when you became pure. Likewise, you can do that with tiglacha tahara. Ma tiglacha tuma shiva. Just like there, you only have to wait 7 days before you can bring the sacrifices again. If this all happens after your 30th day, then all you need is 7 more days, and then you can finish the process. Likewise, he says the same thing here. Likewise here, if you finished your 30 days, you just have to wait another 7 days. That's it. And then you have to say the following, which is, because remember, what's the problem? The problem is if it grows from the root and they left just a little bit, which is a minimum amount, but it's the minimum amount. But it's not the minimum amount here because what? Because it's all new hair growth now, because that was all hair growth that happened while you were a Nazir. Your original stuff got cut off. So how could you possibly do it after 7 days? Because what they're going to say now, Rabbanan, because the rabbis hold, Kol Shiva Yamim, I already told you this, it takes 7 days for your hair to grow that length. Okay, obviously, this is an average amount because we all know that some people's hair grows quicker. Some people's hair grows slower. Okay, but the average is it's a 7-day growth. So in this case, what happened? You were at day 30, 31, let's say. They cut off your hair. You now have no hair from the beginning. But all you have to do is wait 7 days, because we learned that from a Nazir becomes impure on day 7. And this is only according to Rabbi Eliezer. And that's what this braita is saying. This braita goes like Rabbi Eliezer. And it's talking about acharei melot, even though it didn't say that. That's why we call it new kimta. So the Mishnah is only talking about a particular case where it happened after the 30 days were over. And it's Rabbi Eliezer who basically holds, just like you only need to add 7 days, the 7 days of impurity when you become impure, and then you can just do your sacrifices at the end and shave. Likewise here, you can. And why is that okay if the hair growth is all new? Because you have 7 days of hair growth. So once you have 7 days of hair growth, that already is sufficient. Okay? So your 7 days of hair growth is what you need, and then you're set. Okay? Tov. And that's because that gives you the minimum amount. So basically from the time where your Nazirut was fixed, so to speak, where you're now starting again, you're not really starting again, but at this point you now have 7 days and you have 7 days of growth, so you're fine. So in the end, you're going to shave hair that grew now. Nazir shegilach bein betal bein bezug o shesipsep kol shu chaya. Now we're going to the last line in the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said a Nazir who shaves by scissors, razor, pulling out hair, or maybe cutting off the ends of your hair, all of that is forbidden. Kol shu, any bit of hair you cut off is a problem. You've already gone against a negative commandment in the Torah, and you get lashes. Now we're going to see this as a source of debate. And we're going to quote what's called the Midrash Halacha, which we always like to quote in the Gemara because the Mishnah just gives us the Halacha. The Midrash Halacha gives us where we learn it from the Psukim. So now we're going to have drashot in the Psukim. We're going to have 3 ways to darsh in the same Psukim, 2 in this braita, and then we're going to bring a third braita. And they disagree about all sorts of issues. We're going to see. Tanu Rabbanit. Ta'al, you have to know the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, Ta'al lo ya'avol al rosho. Ta'al is a razor. So it sounds from the Pasuk, Ta'al lo ya'avol al rosho, that it's just a razor. So how did we get to all these extra things? And that's what the braita is going to say. Ta'al en li ala ta'al. Sounds like only with a razor. Talash, what if I plucked it out with my hands? Meret, I used a depilatory cream. Sif-sif, okay, now here's the problem with saying plucked, because talash and sif-sif both appear here in the braita. So either they're different ways of pulling out a hair. I don't know, maybe one's like more with a tweezer and one's with your hands. Not clear. If you say sif-sif comes from silk the ends and you just cut off the ends, then it makes sense. One is cutting off the ends and one is pulling it out. Anyway, where you pulled off the ends, like with your hand. I don't know. It's not so easy to do that, but let's say you did. So anyway, you have other methods of cutting your hair off. Kol shehu, even any little bit of all these things. Minayin, how do we know? Because of the continuation of the pasuk. What does it say? Talmud lomar kadosh yihiyeh. You need to be sanctified. Gadil perasal rosho. You have to grow your hair. So because you have to grow your hair, what do we see? Growing your hair is now it's a little bit tricky because you're not going to get lashes for that. So now we have a distinction. If you did it with a razor, you're going to get lashes because you went against a negative commandment. If you do it in any other way, it's forbidden, but you won't get lashes. All you did was you didn't fulfill a positive commandment about growing your hair. You're now a Nazir, you have a positive commandment to grow your hair, and you didn't do that, so that's your problem. So he basically views it, there's a lo taseh, a negative commandment, and there's a positive commandment. Rabbi Yonatan Omer, Ta'al, he has a different approach. Ta'al en li ala ta'al. He actually goes against our Mishnah. He says, Ta'al, no, it's just a razor, not anything else. Mirei talash sif-sif kol shu, patur. You do any of those, you're exempt. And when he says exempt here, he has to disagree with Rabbi Yoshia. Often, exempt means you're exempt, meaning like in Shabbat, patur aval asur, it's forbidden by rabbinic law or something, but, or you won't get the punishment for it, but it's still not a good thing to do. According to him, you're totally exempt. How do we know? Because according to Rabbi Yoshia, it was only not fulfilling a positive commandment. So there's nowhere else to drop after that other than to say it's permitted entirely. So since he's disagreeing with Rabbi Yoshia, he must be saying it's permitted entirely. V'haktiv kadoshiyeh. So the Gemara says, but the verse says, kadoshiyeh gadel parasal rosho. You have to grow your hair. So how could it possibly be it's permitted for you to do that? He understands, again, it's not the accepted opinion, but he understands that what? Just a razor. What's this positive commandment? It's to teach you that if you take a razor and you cut your hair with a razor, you basically end up going against a negative commandment, so you'll get lashes, and you also didn't fulfill a positive commandment. Okay, there's no punishment for it. There's really no punishment for not fulfilling positive commandments except for two. Which ones? Brit Milah and Korban Pesach. Okay, you don't do those two. Those are two mitzvot aseh that you get karet if you don't do that. But everything else, no punishment, but you did something worse because you didn't fulfill a positive command. So we have this machloket. Is it only tar or is it other things as well? What's the difference? Well, tar is just a much closer cutting of your hair. Now we bring a different braita, and this is going to go into tomorrow's daf. So we'll just start it today. Tal ein li ela tal. Okay, so another braita, Tanya Idach, there's another braita that starts off the same way. Okay, tal means only a razor. Talash mirei tzif kol shuminayin. So this agrees with Rabbi Yoshia. Where do we get it? We get it from somewhere, but he's going to learn it differently. And it's going to be a different, remember Rabbi Yoshia, he said all the other methods, it's only going to be not fulfilling a positive commandment, but there's no negative commandment, so you won't get lashes. Comes this third opinion and says, no, it's forbidden and you get lashes. And from where do we learn it? Talmud Lama, lo ya'avor rosho. He splits between the word ta'al and lo ya'avor rosho. The simple reading of the pasuk is tar lo ya'avor rosho. Don't pass a razor over your head. But what he does is this Tana, we'll see this is machloket in this Mishnah, but this braita, but the Tana Kama says ta'al is separate. Tar is one thing. Lo ya'avor rosho is a negative commandment saying don't put anything over your head. Don't cut your hair in any way. And from there you learn all the others, and all the others are also negative commandments. You'll get lashes for any kind of method of taking hair out. To which the Gemara says, so if in the end, lo ya'avor rosho means anyway, then there's something weird about the pasuk. Why does it mention the razor then? The razor has no place here. To which he says, and this is a classic, if it doesn't come to teach this, it must come to teach something else. We usually call it an ime no inyan. If it has no inyan, no purpose to be here, it must be teaching us something else. We don't have any other verse to prove that when you shave at the end of your, because again, there's two shavings. One is you can't shave when you're a Nazir. And the second is you have to shave your hair off when you finish. How do you shave your hair off when you finish? Is there a particular way to do it? Doesn't say so in the Torah. Just says the galeach. What is the galeach? So comes the Tana here and says, from the word tal, which is in the section about not cutting your hair, we're going to listen, since the word is unnecessary there, because obviously you're going to get, again, obviously according to him, you're going to get lashes for any kind of method of hair removal. Therefore, the tar is coming to teach you about the tar at the end of your process. To which they're now going to have a whole thing, which we're not going to really start today, which is you might have thought, you might have thought to learn it from the leper, but we can't because, and then tomorrow they're going to explain in the next step why you can't learn it from the leper. And then there's going to be a whole complication because this braita assumes that the leper, it's obvious you can learn, like that the leper has to shave, because the leper has a whole shaving thing we'll talk about in the next step. The leper has to shave, and it's obvious to this braita that he does it with a razor. Later on, the Gemara on Daf Mem, the next stop, they're going to actually hold the opposite. The Nazir, it's obvious from this drasha that we just had, and Mitzorah, we don't really know from where it comes from. And that's a little bit strange, and the Gemara is going to have to try to deal with it. Anyway, that will take us actually into Mem Aleph, okay? It's going to take us a while to try to figure that whole thing out. But in any case, the simple right now, before I try to kind of complicate things matters based on tomorrow's stuff, is basically that right now we have three approaches. Tar is a mitzvah lo taseh, and the rest of them are just not doing a positive commandment, bitul aseh it's called, or only ta'ar, all the rest are permitted, or ta'ar and all the rest are forbidden by the Torah from lo yavor rasho. That word ta'ar is really not there to teach about that. It's really there to teach you that you have to shave at the end of the Nazir process with a razor. The shaving has to be done with a razor, can't be done with anything else. Because when you cut your hair at the end, you don't just cut it, can't use scissors, can't use anything else. You have to use a razor. So quick review. Yeah, we already did the review of the beginning. We had this, right, Abaye Rav Papa. Then we moved on to the question of the hair growth, because it mentioned this Gilchuhu listim and canceling 30 days. They then went into this other conversation about what if they didn't shave you, the Mishnah was talking about, they shaved your entire head. What if they didn't shave your entire head and they left some? Do you need, right? Is that we assume it's hair growth from the beginning, or it's not, and you need new hair growth? So then in the end, we said it, right? It all depends on how your hair grows. We brought 5 attempts to prove it. 2 of them in the end were successful, and we proved your hair grows from the roots and the follicles. Then we basically brought up the braita that seemed to contradict that in terms of this halacha that was around halachic ramification, if they shaved and left over some hair. But we ended up explaining that in a unique situation and according to an individual opinion, and that resolved it. Then we brought these 3 braitot about shaving and whether cutting your hair is forbidden in all different methods or only in one, or is it the others not, maybe you're not going to get lashes. And we saw all 3 different opinions. That's it for today. Wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom.